What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 14 of Beyond the Physique podcast. Today I'm here with Shelby Vaca, Coach Shelby. Thank you for being here today, Shelby.
Thank you for having me, yes.
We're going to talk a little bit about reverse dieting, some strategies, the importance of it, what it is, etc. But before we jump into all that, Shelby, how's your week going? What's going on in your world?
It's going okay. I have had a lot of athlete wins this week. A lot of them are hitting PRs or hitting water goals that they set for themselves, personal goals that they set for themselves. So it's been a really, really positive week for my roster, which is cool. Awesome. And a couple of the newer athletes that I've signed up this previous week are already loving the program, which makes me really happy, and they're excited to continue. And yeah, so it's been good. Yeah.
So some personal goals. So obviously, we're coaches, so we're going to give you some nutrition and training goals, but I like that you add in some personal goals there. What are some things that you like to add in or focus on?
So during check-ins, I have a question on there that says, what is one positive thing that's happened to you this week? Because I think that when you're focusing on fitness, it's really easy to get caught up in the black and white and act like, oh, I didn't hit my protein goal this week, I'm a failure, or, oh, I didn't do this. But it's like, you know what? Like, you hit your steps every day, though, and the weather was beautiful, and you can fit into a pair of pants you haven't worn in 2 years. Like, so I really, really like to look at their life as a whole to focus on the good things and continue to motivate them.
Definitely. I think it's easy to get caught up in the numbers, and especially as a coach, you're just looking at like grams of protein and ounces of water and cardio steps out and hours of sleep and all these like metrics, but sometimes you lose the human aspect to that. Like, what is going on in your life that's going good? Like, let's start this with a positive mindset, because mindset's a big part of it.
Exactly.
Sure.
And I don't want them or any of my athletes to think that if they're 10 ounces off of their water goal, that I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, you're a failure. It's really more than that, and I'm looking at everything. So I want to know what the good stuff is that's happening. Like, give it to me. I have people that'll send me pictures of their kids on Halloween, and people who I'm like, yes, do that. I love seeing that stuff. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. Having more of like a balanced life approach is definitely, it's good for the long term. And yeah, I think people are skipping over dollars to pick up pennies sometimes. They'll focus so much on one metric of their protocol and miss all the big things. When if you just focus on the priorities and prioritize right, you'll see the progress.
I see a lot of that with weight. Like, you're up a pound, but you hit your nutrition goal every day. You hit your water goal every day. You got your steps in. You're in a great mood. No digestion issues. What is the problem?
Right, and you're looking better. So
just taking an overall approach, everybody on my roster is having a pretty good week. I'm here for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
me too.
Nice.
I've got 3 people in a reverse diet at the moment, and everybody is crushing it. To be honest,
that's incredible.
So
because that is hard.
It is, and I keep telling them I'm so grateful for how serious you're taking this reverse, and I think they think I'm just trying to give them praise or something, but no, for real, this shit's tough.
It's so hard.
You see, I don't know, now fact checkers on the internet fact check me on this one, but I saw a picture of Larry Wheels post the Olympia, the amateur Olympia, and he was up an excessive amount of weight from some binges, and he looked horrible, but blood pressure, oh my God, he was probably close to the ER, to be honest.
Yep, and I think education's a big part of that, because when I did my first reverse diet, I mean, let's be honest, we were both fairly new at this, so it is definitely a learning curve, but I was like, oh, what's the worst thing that can happen? I gained 10 extra pounds. No, that is not the worst thing that can happen. There is so much that goes into it.
The changes in how you look is probably the smallest potatoes of messing up a reverse diet.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll kind of jump into it a little bit. Shelby, what is a reverse diet?
So, reverse dieting is a strategy that bodybuilders use post show to go back into some sort of normal eating habits in a slow manner to prioritize health and gain the least amount of body fat as possible.
Yeah, definitely. So basically transitioning out of that extreme deficit period. It's a slow titration of food up and slow titration of cardio down to basically resensitize you to cardio and totally just bring that stress load down. The goals are definitely different for men and women. So for women post-show, you're looking at basically menstrual regularity as like that's your biggest indicator. Now, obviously you want to stay as lean as possible as you can, but until you get close to your set weight, that menstrual cycle is not going to return back to normal until you're close to the body weight that you lost it at. That might be a little bit different, so you might be able to regain your period like a few pounds under where you lost it. So if like in your contest prep you went from 130 to like 105 and you lost your menstrual cycle around 115, 120, then it's going to be around 115, 120 before we get that back. So for a woman, your goal is to try to get them back to that weight fairly quickly without any kind of issues with blood pressure, because you're depleted once you go adding a bunch of carbs and sodium. It really has its effects on the renal system, and you can just slam blood pressure through the roof there, and that's just not healthy. And sometimes you'll see like edema if you have a binge post show. It's like water retention. Some people, it's so bad that like when they take their socks off, like it leaves sock imprints on their feet. That's pretty bad.
Yep, I've seen that.
But ultimately the goal is to regain that menstrual cycle health for a woman. For a man, you're just trying to bring your food up to a position where it's more manageable to eat, more realistic, without putting on so much body fat. You're still going to have the thyroid adaptation as a male, just as like you would as a woman, and you want a reverse diet to reverse some of those effects. But the main goal for a woman is regaining that. So before we move on, in your opinion, because now you've had to deal with reversing both, do you feel like it's easier to coach someone in a reverse if they're male versus female? Ultimately, I would say coaching them determines on their relationship with food. Okay. So their relationship with food is going to determine how difficult the reverse diet is, more so than whether you're male or female. Because I have now had awesome and blown reverse diets, male and female. Okay. And that had more to do with the relationship with food and maybe the long-term approach, like the show date's the last date of the diet, versus having the mindset of like, okay, show date, maybe like a month after that is when I'm, quote, out of prep, you know? And that's my perspective. I had that mindset. We'll get into that, but that was my mindset for both of my shows. Was the show day was the last day of my diet, and that is no longer how I will view that because it's not healthy. Yeah, it's not ideal. Correct. Yeah. So what are, in your opinion, what are some, like if someone follows their reverse diet to a T, what are some positive things that you see happen? Okay, so some positive things that you're going to have happen if you reverse properly. Let's set the prerequisite of you got lean enough first. Okay. If you did not get truly show lean, some of these benefits won't apply to you. So when you are truly depleted and you now come into a reverse phase, it is an opportunity to grow. If you don't reach that stage leanness, then you won't have as much of like this rebound phase. So basically, if you do get show lean, you'll have a rebound growth effect. Your body's going to be super ready to use that fuel that you're now giving it. So if you take a week after your show and rest, and then now start training again, your body's going to utilize that food very, very well.
It's going to be very responsive.
Yeah, so you're extremely responsive to training and the increases. You're going to be able to eat more food and maintain your body weight. Your training is going to increase. Like, you're going to be able to be stronger. You're going to have more endurance. You're going to be able to lift for longer. You're going to improve your gut health. And you're going to improve just like all of your health markers. So, like your fasted blood glucose is going to return to normal. Hopefully your blood pressure stayed fine all the way and you were handling that all the way through. But you're going to see just general increases in better training. You're going to have more opportunity to eat more food without gaining fat, etc. What would you add to that?
Yeah, you pretty much summed it up. Like, reversing is just important for overall mental and physical health. It reduces stress in the long run. I think it helps with body image a lot when you're not binging and feeling all bloated and gross after a show.
Definitely.
So yeah, you pretty much summed it up. Those are all really good things.
Yeah, I think the mental health part of that too is something I miss, because when you're stage lean, you want to stay stage lean. Like, you always want to look like that. But that's just completely unrealistic. And if you just blow your reverse, then you don't have that leanness for as long, and you're just a little less satisfied, and then you kind of want to go back to that again faster.
Yeah, it's a guilt thing too, because
Yeah.
there's no going back. Once
Right.
you're there, like once you've binged and once you've gained that weight back, there is no going back to stage lean anytime soon.
We're not dieting in a reverse. Like, if you put on a little bit of extra body fat, that is there. And then it's going to stay there until we could get to a point where we can cut again.
Exactly. Yeah, I think mental health is something, when it comes to a reverse diet, that should be brought up before the reverse and almost used as a warning. Like, hey, if you don't follow this reverse, this is how you're going to feel. These are the things that are going to happen, just to let you know.
Yeah. So what happens if you blow a reverse?
Yeah, so some negative side effects of not following your reverse diet I can pull from personal experience, because I didn't follow either of mine, which I very much regret. And you know what? I'm just using it as a learning experience, and my next reverse diet I am going to perfect. I have told myself I am going to smash my next reverse diet. But some negative things is the binging. When you eat all that food, you do bloat. I have never felt so much bloating in my life. It really, you just feel so fatigued and bogged down because your body is so fragile. It's in such a fragile state when you're that lean, and then you're pile driving all this food in, it doesn't know what to do. So it's almost painful. Like, the binging episodes can be painful. So the bloating and water retention is something. It causes high stress on your body and your mental health for sure when you don't follow a reverse diet. If you dive into the sweet stuff, which I did this past show, I had my cinnamon rolls as my vice. I'm not kidding. I was eating like 2 or 3 cinnamon rolls a day for like a month post-show. I gave myself 6 cavities. So your body's in a fragile state. It can't heal itself or protect itself like it would be able to. So if you just dive into that stuff, it's very, very dangerous right off the bat.
Yeah.
Your metabolism is not as fast as it would be if you would follow a reverse and slowly go back into those eating patterns, because your body's so stressed out and your adrenal system's so stressed out, it literally doesn't know what to do with all that food. So it just kind of like sucks it up, and then it sits there because it still thinks that it's being starved, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the gut dysbiosis, you can really, really mess up the bacteria in your gut. And, you know, like when after my show, I was allergic to dairy. And it's like, well, yeah, obviously something's going to be wrong with your gut because I just pile drove food for months. And you don't realize how much the bacteria in your stomach does for you when it's working until it stops working. And then you're like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
So it can really, really mess up your digestion as well. And you'll have the excess body fat, like you mentioned, and then the disordered eating, man. It can really, really get to a person physically and mentally. And once you go down that road and you tell yourself, I'm going to follow this plan, and then you don't do it, it's so, so hard to get out of that mindset once you're there.
Self-confidence is built from making commitments to yourself and following through with them. So the more you follow through with, the more you'll be confident in yourself. And the more you kind of skip over or let slide, then you won't value your own word, and then your own self-confidence starts to slip.
It's a very, very deep, dark hole to go down, and it's really, really scary. And I think that that's another reason why education on reverse dieting is so important. Like, before you even sign up for a show, we're talking about reverse dieting, because it can make or break an athlete for sure.
So actually, that's funny you mentioned that. I scheduled meetings with everybody that's going into prep. And we're having a pre-prep meeting.
Yes, sir.
And during this meeting, I'm going to bring up the reverse diet.
As you should.
And again next month. And again next month. And again.
Because I'm going to be honest, I'm not saying prep's easy, but in my opinion, like, you have so many people rooting for you, and you have support systems, and you have all these things, and it's like in everybody else's head that's around you, oh, you're done with the show, you can eat what you want.
Oh, you're back to normal, right? Here's a cheeseburger.
Peer pressure, and it's so, so hard to say no to those things when your support system is just not there anymore, because they're the ones that are egging you on, like, it's fine, you don't have to compete anymore. So it really, really takes a strong-minded person to follow through with a reverse diet. So it should be brought up throughout the prep more than once.
That's something I'm doing as a coach to improve on that aspect, because I've seen the reverse go wrong, and I don't want to be that coach that has athletes that mess up the reverse diet. I mean, obviously mistakes are going to happen, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that my athletes are taking the reverse serious, because they understand the repercussions if they don't.
Exactly. And that's why, like, I was so embarrassed and ashamed that I messed up not one, but two of my reverse diets. But I'll gladly share all of the information on those, because I think that educating people on what can go wrong when you don't follow your reverse diet is just as important as telling people the things that could go right, because it is miserable if you do not follow that reverse diet. It's the worst. It's terrible.
So one thing to bring up there too, that's not necessarily like going to land you in the hospital, but a huge benefit of prep is the insulin sensitivity that you gain from it. So your pancreas basically has to create less insulin to get the same job done that it used to, because you were pounding carbs like crazy before. Carbs and fats, it needed to have this large, it was a large pancreatic load. So now that you've reduced that, you've increased insulin sensitivity. We want to keep that as long as we can into your growth phase, so we can get the most growth and the most out of your food, because that nutrient partitioning is in an awesome position. And if you just throw that off with a bunch of high glycemic carbs and high glycemic load, then ultimately we're going to run into insulin sensitivity issues earlier on into your growth phase, and your growth phase isn't going to be as effective. So there's that.
So you've reversed once. What was your personal experience with your reverse?
So I took my reverse pretty serious, because I still had a lot of events going on that summer. So I competed in May, and I had a lot of things going on that summer. I didn't want to look like a dick for, so I want, I had like some trips and things like that. So I was about 10 pounds up about 3 weeks post-show from my stage weight.
That's awesome.
So I honestly took it really serious. And what I actually improved on, this was my mistake, and I know this, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it, but I used too many artificial sweeteners in my prep.
Oh, really?
I did. And when I got into my reverse, my food was able to come up just a little bit, and I was using artificial sweeteners and things to use more food volume to feel more full, but really the extra calories I was able to maintain like a leaner look and just get rid of that artificial bullshit. And I looked even better. So had I pulled those artificial sweeteners for myself earlier in my prep, I would have looked better because I pulled those in my reverse, in peak week, and then kept that in my reverse. And I was able to eat more calories and look leaner. So I actually learned that about myself. And again, I'm a little embarrassed to admit that because that's kind of a no shit.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
but my coach at the time didn't say anything about it. So I was just following the plan.
So as a point of reference, you said that you were about 10 pounds heavier 3 weeks post-show.
3 weeks post-show.
I was 108 pounds on stage, and 2 weeks post-show, I was 134 pounds.
Yeah. That was, now, your set point before prep was
around
right 130, 134.
Yep.
So you just went right back to your set point, which we then found is honestly a pretty solid set point because you didn't go much over that.
No, I didn't. It didn't matter how much I ate. I just hung out at 130.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
I mean, yeah.
You definitely shouldn't have gotten there in 2 weeks, but okay.
Right. Yeah, we should have slowed that down a little bit.
Yeah.
But
it's all a learning experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Jason, for example, competed on the 4th at 203, 204. He's 212 this morning. He's a little different breed, though. We just sent his updated meal plan. He's at 4,300 calories. So
Jason, if you're listening to this, you're a tree, bro.
Yeah. We just updated that I went from 39 to 43, which for him is a pretty small adjustment. It's pretty wild.
And that just goes to show how different, yes, he's an anomaly. I don't understand how he's eating that much, but men and women are so different. You bump a female's calories 100 and they're like, oh
There's
my God,
also
I'm so
a difference
full.
between, I'll say it, Jason's a hard-working fucking dude.
Oh, 100%.
So his steps, his average activity level,
he never stops.
He never stops. So that goes, that's the power of NEAT, right? Non-exercise activated thermogenesis. The dude can eat everything, right? And yeah.
That's crazy. So in your experience or your opinion, what are some things that you bring to the table as a coach to help someone through their reverse diet, or how do you feel like hiring a coach for a prep and a reverse can benefit a person rather than them trying to do it on their own, or people doing a show and then quitting immediately after? And because I've seen athletes do that, and it's like, well, what, you have no plan now, what are you going to do? You can't.
So I'm not going to say what you're going to do as an individual because I don't know your skill set, but I'll tell you what a coach is going to do. So a coach is going to go over your lab markers and make sure everything's in range from your lipids to your CMP, CBC, to your sex hormones and your adrenals. They might also do a GI map if needed, just to make sure that your gut biome is on point. And they're going to make sure that your physique comes up slowly, we fill you out slowly in a way that's healthy. And they're going to make sure that thyroid adaptation essentially goes away. So when you're in a chronic dieted situation, then you're going to have some thyroid adaptation that you want to work out. So the coach is going to help you with that too. So that's what a coach is essentially going to help with.
And I think that something that you I think that in your head you're like, oh, I don't do enough of this, or you kind of downplay yourself. Even when I was messing up my reverse diets, you were still there every single day mentally for me. And I think that that's a huge part of it too, because if you have a coach that sends you a meal plan and then doesn't check in with you during your reverse until 7 days later, there's a lot that can happen in that 7 days that they may feel guilty about telling you, that they, there's so much that could happen during a reverse. So I think that, which you did. You just
Yeah,
continually
sometimes
checked
I
in.
felt like you had this like balloon that was filling up, and every like day or two I had to come up, pop it, and
Exactly.
just get what you had out of there.
That's a perfect
I'd
analogy.
be like, "Yo, what's up, Shelby? Like, how's your day going?" And then it'd be like, boom, paragraph. Like, there it is. I knew there wasn't nothing.
Yep, and that's another,
I seen them cinnamon rolls in my fitness pal.
Yeah, I logged them too. I didn't care. But yeah, just like being there for your athletes mentally too, because reversing it's really, really difficult. And just being
It's the
a
hardest
support
part of the prep.
system. Yeah, I agree.
So, all right. What are some strategies that you found that when you weren't, like when you were doing well on your reverse, that helped you?
So my suggestion would be to plan, because I didn't have a plan. Like, you gave me a plan, but I didn't have a plan. So yes, you had a meal plan ready for me. You had workouts ready for me the next day. Like, everything was set out. But mentally, before I even stepped on stage for both shows, I was thinking, what am I going to eat after this? I can't wait to do this, this, and this, and eat this, and this week. Instead of, yes, the next month or so is going to be a little bit more strict than I would like it to be, but here's all the benefits that are coming from that. So I think that really, really setting yourself up before the show, during prep, like when you start prep, prepare for your reverse.
Yeah, and by preparing for your reverse, that doesn't mean that specifically means do not hoard the post-show treats. They're going to be there when the show is over.
Yeah.
I promise. Like, if you are craving a brownie post-show and you have to go somewhere to get it, then you might make the decision, that's not a good idea. But if you open your freezer and, well, I don't know, I have to get through these before I let go, but you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like,
And I think that another thing I would say would be to work on your relationship with food as well, because I thought that I had a healthy relationship with food, and I clearly did not. And I've done a lot of work in therapy to get to a point now where food just doesn't matter as much to me. I don't look at it as something that's like a life or death. Like, if I don't eat these cinnamon rolls, I'm gonna die. Because that's crazy to say, but that's like how I was viewing my reverse. Like, I felt like my body was making choices for me. Like, I couldn't control them. Yeah. So I would say just planning during prep for your reverse, and then really working on your emotions and going and talking to somebody is a huge, huge benefit.
Yeah, I'll say that the athletes that I have that work with a therapist about their mindset with food have so much better results long term. Like, I might be able, like, you can have a bad relationship with food and I can get you shredded, but you're not going to stay looking good for a long time.
Exactly. And everybody has their thing. But for a lot of people, that thing is food. And sometimes you don't even realize it until you're that lean and your mind is playing tricks on you. So, yeah, I would say plan and stick with that plan, make a promise to yourself and keep it, and build that self-confidence. And I would say talk to a therapist as well of some sort.
Definitely. Well, overall, I think the reverse diet is one of the hardest things of contest prep. I agree. For your next prep, we're going to be planning back-to-back shows, so we'll have to talk strategy a little bit between that. I would like to do some kind of celebratory meal after show one, but it's going to be a little more controlled. And honestly, I'm not thinking even a restaurant.
Mm-hmm. And that's a mindset thing too. Like, I have already mentioned this, but I don't even offer me a treat after my show. I don't want it. Yeah. I can't. Because if I have one, I will have all of them.
Because if one's okay, then what's the difference between 1 and 2? And then
2 and 5.
And then as soon as you start negotiating yourself with yourself, you're done. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like Cash Guidry said, like, the most important conversation you have every day, it's with yourself, and it's continuous. So, and as soon as you start to negotiate with yourself, you've lost. So you got to condition yourself over time to follow through with what you say you're going to do. Anyways.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. Is there any last minute thoughts that you wanted to add to this?
No, just, I mean, wrapping up, like, make sure you have a good coach when you go into a prep. Make sure you're thinking long term about the reverse. Make sure you're planning and executing and communicating, being
I'll
honest
add to
with
that. It
yourself.
doesn't matter how good your coach is if you don't follow the plan. And it doesn't matter how good your coach is if you're not communicating with your coach.
Yeah, don't lie. Don't, like, cheat on your diet and then lie about it. Like, just be upfront and honest, because holding that stuff in makes you feel even more guilty, which leads to even more binges. And it's like this giant tumbleweed that won't
From
stop.
a coach's perspective, like,
How
I
are they
don't know what
supposed to help
change.
you? How are they
Yeah.
supposed to help you if you're not telling them what you're doing or how you're feeling?
yeah. I had this conversation with a client actually not too long ago about just consistency in general. And so I said, look at it from your perspective of prescribing. I use telmisartan, for example, as it's a blood pressure medication. So if you're prescribing, say, 40 milligrams a day of like a blood pressure medication, and your patient takes 40 milligrams today, 20 milligrams tomorrow, skips a week, and then takes 90 milligrams, then you can't make an adjustment. And then if they tell you they only tracked like half their blood pressure too, then you're going to be like, whoa, what are you going to do? So be honest with what you're doing and be consistent, follow the plan. That's it for today.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for listening
Yes.
to this episode on reverse dieting.
Thank you, guys, and thank you so much for having me again.
Of course, Shelby. Have an awesome week, everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond the Physique podcast. If you enjoyed this and would like to hear more like it, be sure to subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram at Trevor W Training, on YouTube at Strategic Aesthetics, on Facebook, Trevor Woodyard, and you can also apply for coaching at strategicaesthetics.com.